I challenge you to watch The Railway Children Return and remain dry-eyed throughout. It's incredibly emotional, and I liked it more than I was expecting to. Wildly, it's not been the most well-received film on IMDb. For example, it has 5.5 out of 10, which is not a terrible rating, but it's not exactly great. And I have read some reviews having now watched it, and a lot of people seem to be, perhaps rightly, discussing it as a sequel to The Railway Children, which is, makes perfect sense. Um, it seems like a lot of people who love The Railway Children and have a strong connection to that story have not really seen this as an adequate sequel, which I completely understand if that's the case. I feel the same way about certain sequels, but it's worth mentioning that I have no real emotional connection to The Railway Children as a story. I have seen the film, I think I read the book at one point, enjoyed it well enough, but it was never something that I became obsessed with or in love with. So for me, I can kind of view this as a film in its own right. But I'm aware that for some people with a love of The Railway Children, their views are going to be completely different from mine. So that's something that's worth bearing in mind as I praise various aspects of this film. Your opinion may differ, and other people's opinions have differed if you're coming from a place of love from The Railway Children itself. This is set during the Second World War, and I love films set in Britain during the Second World War, or the majority of them anyway. And it's about these three children who are evacuated from Manchester to a Yorkshire village, and they meet a soldier. I don't want to tell you too much about this soldier because it's not entirely clear to begin with who this soldier is, or where they've come from or what they're doing. So I don't want to spoil too much about that. But they encounter a soldier who is not from Britain. I'll keep it as simple as that. And the children take it upon themselves to try and help him get to where he needs to be going. And it's very sentimental. The narrative is beautifully developed. The pacing is gorgeous. I feel like it brings us new problems at just the right moment. And then we get over those problems, we have some light relief and enjoy the beautiful countryside, and we hear the children laughing, and then it will bring in another problem to keep the momentum going and to keep the narrative moving along. Visually, it is stunning. I'm not sure exactly where it was filmed. I'm sure I can find this out on IMDb while I'm waffling on about other things. I can confirm, first of all, that it was actually filmed in Oakworth, which is where it's set. Gorgeous, gorgeous railway station, and just visually it's stunning. The costumes are beautiful. I'm not sure if they're 100% accurate. I'm sure somebody with a keener eye than me will be able to confirm or deny that either way. And I really enjoyed the acting in it as well, particularly the children. Beau Gadsdon plays Lily, and Zac Cudby as Ted, and Eden Hamilton as Pattie. They are their three children. I also adored Austin Haynes as Thomas. And it really annoys me because I'm sure I've seen him in something else and I cannot put my finger on what it is, but I'm pretty confident I've seen him in something else. And honestly, I don't want to say that Thomas was the child who kind of stole the most attention, but I feel like he was more of a fascinating character than the three main children themselves. But maybe that's just me. Sheridan Smith was also brilliant as Annie, and I enjoyed it. I really did. And it's not perfect. There were certain things in it where I thought, okay, maybe they could have quickened the pace up there a tiny bit, or maybe some of that dialogue was a little bit awkward. But I really enjoyed it. But there is one thing in one of the negative reviews that I agreed with. And I can't remember exactly what this review said, but it basically said it's unclear who this is aimed at. And I completely get that. It's rated PG, and there are times when it felt like a family film. There were times when it felt like a children's film, where some of the vocabulary was very basic, not even just the vocabulary coming out of the mouths of the children, but some of the adults as well, and things were maybe over-explained a bit, as they would be in a children's film. And then there were times when it's discussing really hard-hitting, emotional, quite complex things revolving around the war, and it felt like not so much that it wasn't suitable for children, but something that, just based on how complicated certain bits were, I feel like it should have been a 12. So the target audience kind of mixes throughout it. And on the one hand, that's good because it means it can appeal to a lot of different people. But at the same time, it means that it feels like a film of not necessarily two halves, but it kind of feels fragmented. Like bits of it were, written or directed by one person, bits by somebody else. For reference, it's directed by Morgan Matthews, written by Jemma Rodgers and Daniel Brocklehurst. And for the most part, it's beautifully directed. The dialogue is really pleasing for the most part. And I really did thoroughly enjoy it. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I'm not going to say that I agree with any of the negative reviews because I don't think it's a bad film. I don't think it's a terrible film. I don't even think it's just an okay film. I actually genuinely liked it. Really found it quite emotional and very moving. So if you've been thinking of watching this but have been put off by the large amounts of negative reviews, I'd say still give it a go. If you are coming from a place of great love for the Railway Children, if it's something that you've always loved, or whether that's the book or the film or any other adaptation of it, yeah, I think maybe your opinion might differ, and I'm perfectly willing to accept that certain viewpoints are going to be different. And I have a similar experience with films where I love the original and then they make a sequel and it's not very good, but some people may like the sequel, and that's fine. And I personally really enjoyed The Railway Children Return, but I'd love to know what you think of it. Either way, whether you're a fan of The Railway Children or if you're like me, can take it or leave it. But certainly, either way, I'd say it's worth checking out. Beautiful costumes, really good acting, gorgeous scenery, very emotional narrative. Not perfect, but definitely worth giving a go.